Welcome back to Seattle Sucks, a podcast about hating the city we love. I'm sure that, like us, you are all hunkered down for this mega storm snowpocalypse because this is the first episode in show history that is completely remote. So, Brian, I've got you on the phone, right?
Yes, Colin. Can you hear me? I'm currently bunkered down. All the wooden whatever storm, whatever's are fucking flapping. It's crazy.
It's just like Twister.
The cows are circling around my house. I repeat, the cows are circling around my house.
Greg, buddy, you there?
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you? Broken in a Virginia fence. I seen it. You're fond of me lobster.
Greg, I think we lost him.
Greg, can you hear us?
Oh man, that's the problem with this stuff. Oh
well. Maybe we'll see him again in the Heaviside layer.
Well, we can hope so. Up, Greg. Okay, well, if you couldn't tell, it's just Brian and I, and we don't know where Greg is.
We'll hope for the best.
We will hope for the best. I'm sure he's out there with Poseidon or King Triton or whomever. Aquaman, maybe? But,
if you see him floating, just holding on to a door, pick him up or let the proper authorities know.
Yeah, please do that because we want our Greg back, our captain back. But earlier this week, there was a big rally that you and Greg went to. Isn't that right, Brian?
Yeah. In fact, it was the launch of the King County Bernie Sanders sort of campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Despite rumors, I did my best to try and start by just walking into the room and saying, "Hey, I heard Bernie Sanders is going to be here today." He didn't show up, so I don't know where these unfounded rumors came from. But.
Damn. So that's why you're Yang Gang now, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Me and Greg, of course, we don't support Bernie. We were there to do the Mayor Pete dance, just relentlessly against all the Bernie support.
So I saw some photos. I even think I saw some people that we know. Like maybe I saw Bjorn in there. Rich Smith maybe even was in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that Bjorn was there because he didn't come say hi to me, so I guess we know where we're standing. No, we actually met several listeners at the show.
That's awesome.
So shout out to all those guys, including a guy who's also named Brian, who spells his name incorrectly. No big deal. But yeah, it's great. Maddie, frequent show guest, spoke at it, as well as Sean Scott, friend and endorser of the show. Was the MC. It ended the night, of course, with Shama Sawant speaking.
Awesome.
Who knows, right? Maybe a friend of the show. And but yeah, I mean, it was good. I mean, they had just a cavalcade of speakers, including like 2 or 3 high school students who had resumes that are like at 37. My resume isn't as long as these high school students. Just all sorts of accomplishments. And at one point I leaned over to Greg and I was like, I think when I was a senior in high school, my biggest accomplishment was filling a TV full of gasoline and pushing it off a bridge into a storm drain. Yeah, a little embarrassing.
That's awesome.
And it was generally good. It's crazy. It was at Washington Hall, and there was probably it was full. But the bottom floor and the balcony where, me and Greg were of course up in the balcony like Waldorf and Statler. But even the balcony up there was full. Probably a couple hundred people at least.
Wow,
and
that's rad.
Yeah, and it was kind of crazy. I was actually thinking about it, and I actually turned 18 just in time for the 2000 election between Bush and Gore. I, of course, voted Nader, so throwing Texas to George W. Bush with my vote.
We can blame you for that. Yeah,
according to my father, yes, he's still very much on that train. But so this is election 6 for me now. And to see this far out, a candidate actually it's not like Bernie was fucking there or anything. It was just like a bunch of locals, like come here, city council members say they support Bernie Sanders, and the place was like full. People were excited. I mean, it really is unlike anything I've seen in any previous election I've been a part of, to be sure. Let's just say John Kerry was not garnering this kind of enthusiasm at any point.
I just heard that Gould was coming out for Biden to say that Biden got hoodwinked on his Iraq war vote or something.
Yeah, I mean,
he got swift voted into voting for Iraq.
Yeah, none of our listeners will know this because all our listeners are, of course, Zoomers and were, not even born yet when John Kerry ran. Right. But John Kerry, when he came out for the 2004 DNC convention, literally came out to like military band music, and he came out and gave like a salute and just said, "John Kerry reporting for duty," and his whole thing was how he would fight the wars better, because he was going to run a Ronald Reagan like foreign policy, so he'd run everything better, and not like that dunderhead Bush who just didn't kill enough Iraqis, I guess. So with that is my core memory of John Kerry. So with that, it was, of course, let's just say rich that he was out there being like, Biden got hoodwinked. Let's not blame him for the Iraq war position. It's like, no. I blame you all.
They love that war, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they couldn't get enough of it. That and I love that in 2004. They're like, this is a winning issue. You know what people want? 20 years from now, they're going to be like, dude, it rules that we're still in Iraq.
Yeah, right. We've been in, fucking Iraq for most of our life at this point.
Yeah. I mean, really since 91. So, I mean, that's a crazy thing to think about. But like since 1991, we basically bombed Iraq every day, which is astounding.
Cool. Yeah, good Lord.
Astounding. I don't think that as Americans, we really sit back and appreciate that enough. That being said, I mean, lots of good speeches, lots of inspiring stuff. Yeah. I won't name any names or whatever, but the one thing that did suck at the event was one, I think Maddie was like the second to last speaker to go. It was literally the first, of course, Iran was on everybody's minds. Yeah. And she was literally the first one to say the word imperialism or suggest that maybe the wars in the Middle East might not be some sort of hopeful accident, but might be part of a larger thing. Yeah. We had like somebody from the Young Democrats who was going on about how like, one, that Bernie Sanders was a good candidate because he was a good businessman, which was an interesting tactic.
Whoa.
That hit the room like a wet fart. And then, the usual shit of like, the problem with the, a war with Iran is that America just doesn't get anything out of this. And I was like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be cool if we, I think you're wrong on that, but also like, would it be cool if we did? We came and we got those like Iranian, like foreign reserves. So, the war's now a success. It would have been embarrassing otherwise.
Just brutal. Wow.
So there was
That's
some
rough,
of that,
man.
Yeah. And I mean, not to like characterize the whole night as that, but there was some of that shit. And it just reminds you that like the Democrats are, especially when it comes to foreign policy, just completely fucking useless. Really. Like it's a real it's since John Kerry, a lot of them have learned literally nothing. It's astonishing. Yeah.
Damn. Well, I'm glad that you and our captain went. It does sound like it was mostly a good time. That's cool.
Yeah, it was really good. The energy was super high. I want you to know, Colin, that afterwards, the coolest kids from the rally all went to a bar. We're not going to do any free advertising here, but we all went to a bar. And I still don't want the uncool kids to know they went to the wrong one. But the point being, at one point we were sitting at a table with Sean Scott, a city councilman or a city council candidate, a real serious guy. Day, a journalist, respected journalist in the city, a lovely listener, and this woman who had to flee India for political reasons. And me and Greg were literally yelling at them about cats, and I think we might have convinced them to go see cats. So,
you're putting the time in, doing the work.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody is supporting cats as much as us right now, and that's what sets this podcast apart.
We have to. It's Who else will do it?
Yeah,
no better time than now.
Yeah, I think we changed some minds. I think we, really helped some people out, honestly. Changed some lives. Maddie, by the way, is still pretending that cats is bad, so I don't know what's going on over there.
I thought that maybe she was coming around, but I guess more indoctrination is in order there.
Well, I was talking to her partner, Selena, and Selena tells me, she's like, I was telling her, I was like, literally all me and Brent have talked about since seeing that movie is fucking cats. And I was like, I don't think I've talked about any movie this much this year, at least, if not ever. And as I told her, I was like, at some point we have to acknowledge we're not doing irony anymore, that we're just fans. We're talking about it this much.
Yes, I've been there. I know the struggle. It feels good to just earnestly lean into being a cat's head. Come home, Brian.
Indeed.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And on that note of Iran, I know that there was a really cool editorial that our own paper of record, the Seattle Times, put out.
Well, I'm not sure why anybody would care what the Seattle Times thinks about Iran, but I'm also sure it's going to be very measured and thoughtful.
As it always is. And that exact thought crossed my mind as well. Why even touch this? But okay. So I thought we could read this. I think you have read this already, but we'll read it again.
I wasn't going to destroy the illusion of the podcast, but yes, okay. I have read it, and it is great. I sent it to you guys because I agreed with everything it says.
That's true. And I think all our listeners will find out why. So this was titled, "Don't Squander Moral Authority in Iran."
Fucking amazing start. Go on.
Yeah, that's like, whoa. Okay. So this was posted January 6th. And it's our friends at the Seattle Times Editorial Board. So this is all the heavy hitters, the like 6th generation Blethen freaks.
Yeah, all the people that are dying of like rare blood diseases from the Blethen family.
Yeah, all the creatures that are like irradiated by space or something and barely alive. So they began. Whatever moral authority the United States had to justify the killing of Iran's top general must not be squandered by President Donald Trump.
So, I mean, let's just begin at the beginning right there, right? I love, just without any, it doesn't need to be expounded on or anything like that. I mean, we definitely have the moral authority to murder a foreign diplomat on the airport of one of our colonial holdings.
Yeah,
who have been invited there for diplomatic talks. Yes, I'm glad that we're not going to question that. Just very normal political practice at all.
That sounds highly moral for sure. I also love that the language here is so like delicate that it's almost like maybe it is kind of almost like, did we have moral authority? If we did, let's just make sure Donald Trump doesn't squander it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a shrug, like.
Well, I mean, just the idea. I mean, forget like the details of what happened. Look, don't squander the moral authority that our robot assassination program, like our mechanical death from the skies program has.
Yeah, from some like kid in Las Vegas with an Xbox controller.
Yeah.
So that's how we open, and that's just
screaming start. So
good Lord. Threatening to destroy Iranian cultural sites and flout laws of armed conflict, as Trump did repeatedly in recent days, severely undermines that authority. It also increases tension at a time when the U.S. must be committed to de-escalation and preventing war with Iran.
And so just to show that, like, if you're an editor or, part of the editorial board at the Seattle Times, you're like no less a completely fish-like fucking monster than anybody at the New York Times, the Washington Post. That, this whole thing of like, we basically have to have this fucking war, and that the only problem is like maybe just Trump did it in the wrong way. I mean, just fucking awful.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, well, he's doing it the wrong way. And what do they think an assassination is gonna do? Do they really think that's a de-escalation? So I mean, like, good Lord.
It reminds me of, if I could just read it for just a second.
Oh yeah.
So the State Department released this press release. Basically, so Iraq, of course, after this, immediately held a vote and said, like, the U.S. needs to get out of our country.
Yeah, not pleased.
And since Iraq is not a colony or anything like that, we definitely immediately got up and left, right? So the State Department issued a press release that's literally one paragraph, basically telling, like, no, we're actually never going to leave Iraq. Fuck them. And the first sentence, which reminds me of this first paragraph so much, is just, America is a force for good in the Middle East, period. Okay, cool. I guess no need to look into that or think about that at all.
Wow. Yeah.
No citations needed. We're good.
Just brutal.
Yeah.
Bullying threats do not project strength or power. Instead, they raise questions about Trump's values, strategy, and the advice he's receiving or absorbing as the Iran crisis unfolds.
And so again, is it so projecting strength and power? This is just a good in itself, right? People have to be afraid of us, but we just have to be clear about why they're afraid of us.
Yeah, right. We need to be more Thor, less Loki, I guess. International support is needed for any Middle East strategy to succeed. The United States also needs to play a long game in Iran in hopes of eventual regime change and better relations with its large and educated populace. Educated is a link, but I did not click that shit.
By the way, the implication, if they were not educated, bomb them at will.
Yeah, they deserve to die. Upholding international standards of conduct is also needed for the safety of U.S. troops overseas. None of those important goals are achieved with illegal behavior. What the fuck are you talking about?
So, again, the U.S. has been bombing Iran's neighbor since 1991, a neighbor that we once sold chemical weapons to use against Iranian civilians, but we won't even get into that. But like bombing them since 1991, multiple, the Food for Oil program had multiple UN, heads of people that were in charge of the Food for Oil program called it a fucking genocide. So I love this idea of quibbling about like, this could be illegal. You can imagine like the Nazis standing in the middle of Poland and looking at like some Gestapo officer who like kicked a door too hard and broke it and being like, look, man, we're not here to break rules. All right. Now get those Jews in the train. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, this is incredible shit, truly.
I mean, international standards of conduct. Yes, the U.S. has been upholding those fantastic.
Oh my God. Well, the thing that is so frustrating to me about this, and there's a bit more, so I'll just like touch on it briefly, is how this is so emblematic of the centrist need to be like political galaxy brain.
Oh yeah. Which is literally the next paragraph, but yeah.
Yeah, right. So let's go right into it. It may turn out that the drone strike that killed Iran's Major General Qasem Soleimani last Friday in Baghdad was justifiable and shrewd.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it may not.
We'll see which way the wind's blowing in a week and see where we're at. But yeah.
Well, yeah. But the test of leadership isn't whether Trump can pull a trigger. The test is how well he plans for and manages the consequences.
So again, I mean, this is the typical liberal position of, look, you're not a bad guy just because you murder people all around the world. You're only a bad guy if you don't think about what you're doing the next day, you know?
Right.
And that's where the real mistakes happen. Now let's get this war going.
Voters will decide in November whether Trump is doing a better job in Iran as promised by abandoning a multilateral nuclear treaty and killing Soleimani, and fulfilling a signature campaign promise to end the endless wars in the Middle East and bring troops home.
Well, see, that's interesting, too, because like this idea that, whether Trump's doing better in Iran as promised, Trump's promise to his Chud base, which actually wasn't bad, was that he just wasn't going to do war in the Middle East anymore, which,
Right.
by the way, is the fact that is like what really launched his campaign and like what really built the power of his base, shows that really everybody hates these fucking wars.
Yeah.
But I love the Seattle Times can't come down on a side, though. There's like, they're still good, though. Like,
Yeah,
even
well,
Trump's,
yeah.
Go.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, that's like that second sentence, right? It's like, it's how you plan and manage the consequence, which is war, potentially.
Yeah. Well, and war is just an inevitable consequence, too. Like, it's not one of those things that should be avoided at all costs.
Right.
Or, I don't know if you use like the Nuremberg standard is like the fundamental crime that nations commit, right? A Seattle Times editorial that had like actually any sort of courage or whatever might be like, hey, maybe we should hang Donald Trump, the Secretary of State, and the entire Defense Department for committing an act of war,
Now
as
we're
per our
talking.
treaty agreements.
Oh, man, I would love to see that shit. Congressional pressure might not rein in the president's rhetoric, but it should force the administration to better explain its Iran position.
Oh, there you go. We're not going to do anything to stop this. We just want we want them to use like better words and explaining it to us, I guess.
Yeah, we need
want them to make us feel better about the war that's about to happen.
Some Seattle process in there. Some transparency. That's what we need.
The result is never the goal. It's the process.
It's how we got there. Democrats in Congress are rightly proposing a war powers resolution, stating that the president does not have authorization for war with Iran. This is unlikely to pass the Republican-controlled Senate, but the deliberations are necessary. The administration must also declassify the document notifying Congress of the Soleimani attack, so representatives can ascertain its legality. Jesus Christ.
Just come on, just jerk it off for fucking ever. That too, especially with the Democrats in Congress too. It's like, oh yeah, he needs to ask us before he has a war so that we can vote unanimously for it. All right.
For it, yeah, because we want this just as badly as he does.
Yeah,
but...
and we never vote down a war. So, yeah, that too. And it's like, oh, how about this? If you're worried about all his war bullshit, why did you all vote for his defense fucking budget? Why did you vote to allow him to create a fucking space force? Like, why did you vote every year to increase the defense spending under a guy that you at least publicly claim to be some sort of puppet of Russia? Unless, of course, you don't actually believe any of that shit. That's for your idiotic base, but whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, like, sort of to that point, I think we're touching on the brainworm that liberals have, which is that what they're most concerned about is whether or not rules are followed and obeyed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this literally comes down to he didn't fill out the appropriate paperwork, which was like, when Liz Warren got like fully bodied by fucking Meghan McCain in an interview on The View, which, I mean, anybody who thinks that like Liz Warren's a viable candidate, I mean, come on. Like, she literally got outwitted by the like dumbest child to ever get a job because their parents, or because their daddy was a senator. And Yeah, and her whole basic thing was like, I guess everything Trump did was good, except for the fact that he didn't put the proper request. It was like some Office Space shit. Like he didn't put a cover page on the
Right.
report.
Yeah. Yeah, like a
that was the
technicality,
problem.
basically.
Yeah, exactly.
A bureaucratic process,
Yeah.
which is just, it's like we talked about earlier. It's just like obfuscating the brutality of what we did and what we intend to do.
Oh
Like
yeah,
getting focused on this legal minutia and not the real world consequences of the things that we do.
Well, as a society, we created a flying fucking robot whose job it is, because it can fly for just hours and hours at a time, is to just patrol the sky in circles until we find a child at play, so that some fucking dipshit in Nevada can, use his Xbox controller, can drop a bomb on it and then post the video to his friends, while like hitting some, code red. Right. And, I love that none of this can be discussed or debated or anything like that. Like, just how utterly fucking awful and inhuman all this is. Like, no, let's just talk about bullshit paper. Yeah, let's not talk about anything that actually happened.
Right. Or saying thanks, Obama, for building up this apparatus.
Yeah, and I mean, people consider it to be, it's gauche to say this or whatever. It breaks whatever dumb internet rule that some fucking nerds from the 90s are all into. But I will again say that we killed 500,000 children as part of the Oil for Food program, so I think this is actually apt. But imagine if you were at the Nuremberg trials and like some guy was up there describing like the horrors they experienced in the camps and stuff like that, and your only response was like, look, nobody cares about that, all right? Let me see that paperwork. Did the Auschwitz guard file the correct paperwork to bring in the prisoners and shovel them into the fucking ovens?
Right.
And by God, if he didn't dot a single I or didn't put a single cover sheet on there, he is through, sir. At least a 2-week suspension. I mean, like, you're talking about, the worst fucking crimes humans can do to each other and arguing about process. It fucking should beggar the conscience. Like, it's fucking awful.
Yeah, it's really truly terrifying. And though they start off pretty turgid with their moralizing, they kind of give that up throughout this, but that doesn't mean that other liberals aren't doing that moralizing for them when they paint Soleimani as like basically Osama bin Laden Jr. And enemy number one, even though no one knew who he was for the most part, is also pretty reprehensible. And so, I mean, like, if you want to play Galaxy Brain, doesn't seem like it sets a great precedent, because now, I don't know, if you're an Iranian, you might think you could kill a general somewhere.
Oh, well, and also, like, for future American presidents, right?
Yeah.
We've completely set the precedent that you can just kill, like, any, like, normal poor person. We've long ago set the precedent that you can literally do whatever you want to them. Kill them, torture them to death, right?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. We've just, as a society, have said that's okay. We all agree with that. We're all okay with it. And we just don't care, right? But now, I mean, it is like an escalation. Be like, okay, well, how about this? Important foreign heads of state, just out in the open, right? On diplomatic missions, which, I mean, talk about like breaking down, nothing's better than countries being paranoid that that the US is about to invade them at any minute, and then destroying any way for them to have like international communication and diplomacy. Which after that Iranian airliner got shot down, the U.S. blocked the Iranian one of the Iranian counselors from basically getting into New York so he could go speak at the UN. So the U.S. basically like, we control I mean, the thing that everybody knows, but you're not allowed to say out loud, we control this international body, and if we decide that you're an official enemy, you just don't get to participate, which again, cutting off diplomacy for various groups. Definitely, it will have no bad consequences down the road whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's what is incredible, I guess, for me to swallow, is how many people are out cheering this move.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's
just the complete lack of backbone of the entire Democratic Party, basically. Sans one Bernard Sanders, his foreign policy has actually gotten a lot better, and thank God he was the only one that was like, war is fucking insane. This is crazy.
Yeah, let's not do this.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're almost finished with this, so here we go. In the meantime, the State Department and Pentagon, if not the White House, should affirm that the U.S. military will not target cultural sites in violation of law and treaties.
Yeah, human beings perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Cultural sites, I mean, that's going too far. Look, as a historian who loves all that shit, yeah, it sucks that we care more about that than we care about any humans in Iran.
Yeah, and this was, I think, honestly, this was kind of a shrewd move by ISIS to just, really troll the West by destroying so much history.
It basically, I mean, they really hit, they couldn't attack the United States directly, but they really hit, fucking American, wealthy American dipshits in the only place that actually would hurt them. Basically by doing two things, which was taking over oil wells and selling the oil themselves, right? Which pissed off, which, let's be real, that's why the United States hated ISIS so much.
Yeah.
But the other one was, going out and being like, look, you obviously don't care that we're throwing people off buildings or anything like that.
Yeah.
So how about this? We'll blow up one of your, beloved tourist traps. Now take a deal with that. Yeah, but I mean, it is this astonishing thing. I can't remember what podcast I heard of this on, though. But I mean, they did mention that for Trump to threaten this, it is this thing that has no parallel in the U.S. because the U.S. literally has no culture or cultural sites. So we've insulated ourselves from this by literally having just nothing of value. And
what about the Mall of America?
Yeah, basically, right? We have literally nothing of historical, religious value at all, right? And so we've insulated ourselves from this, but also have no idea how people would react if we went and just sort of bombing Persian cities, that might actually unleash a reaction that we aren't prepared for, because we have no humanity, so we don't understand how other people might feel if we took part of their humanity away.
Yeah. And I don't think that we see those people as people at all.
Yeah.
And another thing that this touches on, which I think I maybe mentioned in our brief conversation before we taped, is this is really chiefly all about aesthetics again, this whole thing, even the moralizing, but especially this bit, which, as you've said, it's it's perfectly fine to kill hundreds of thousands of children, to bomb people from the sky with robots, to perform extraordinary rendition on people and just detain them indefinitely, to humiliate them in prison. But what's not okay? It's not okay to bomb cultural sites in violation of law and treaties. It's what fucking law and treaties do you think we aren't obeying?
But I know I've definitely mentioned this multiple times on the show. This is one of my favorite things that Ed Murray ever said or did, which was that year the SPD rioted all over Capitol Hill on May Day. Ed Murray was being interviewed by Blabbermouth, by The Stranger, and him and Eli Sanders were basically just in a fight over who could come up with the most absurd comparison for the Black Bloc. And Ed Murray's was that they were ISIS because they had spray painted a statue over at the college. And he's like, they spray painted a statue, they destroyed art. That's what ISIS does. And I was like, yeah, I think, and a few other things. But I mean, it really shows where that type of person, how they value stuff, right? Again,
right.
For him, ISIS was that they destroyed some art pieces, not that they were chucking people off of buildings or parading townspeople like around in cages or anything like that, like, or creating the worst like a refugee crisis of the modern era. That wasn't the bad thing they did. The bad thing they did was they blew something up, which, I mean, to be clear to listeners,
Totally.
like that is bad, but in comparison, to the other things, like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, and that feels like it just gets lost, and it's certainly not mentioned even once in this piece, which is almost concluded. So here it goes. Let's just finish this.
Yeah, I'll finish. I'll shut up.
This,
so
no. I'm dragging it out too. So, as the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization stated Monday, these heritage sites are universal vectors of peace and dialogue between peoples, which the international community has a duty to protect and preserve for future generations. Destroying such sites is immoral. Threatening to do so is not being strong and tough. Rather, it is being frighteningly petty and short-sighted. America is better than that. Is it, though?
I know. Again,
is it
like if you look at our cities, like, we literally, like, our society just functioning actively does this all the time, right? Like, we're not even allowed to have historical sites or anything like that because the city is constantly, like, metabolizing everything around it, eating it, and turning it into some cheap fucking clone of whatever it used to be. And, everything, to use the, an academic term, everything becomes just a simulacrum of a simulacrum. It's just a copy of a cheap copy of a cheaper copy. And it's this, I mean, it just gets grosser and grosser. So I mean, like, America's better than that. No, America is that. Like, America is ISIS blowing up the statues and shit. Like, that's just, we're that just on a massive scale. Just like, if ISIS is the family farm, we're the massive, like, plant grinding all the animals at the pulp.
We're like Monsanto or Conagra or something.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of, their sort of phony baloney concern here of this shit. I mean, especially in Seattle, where, I mean, there, like, functionally is no art that isn't awful. But it reminded me
murals.
Yeah, I know. Jesus Christ. Somebody put a Henry sticker up on the gas station by my house, and I was like, uh-oh, gentrification. But gentrification incoming. But the other night, I made Bryn watch the movie that I have actually more and more. I used to say it as a joke, but actually, I am now, like Cats. It's not. I'm not doing irony anymore. I actually authentically believe this. Might be the best and most prophetic movie of the last decade, which is the movie, the Roland Emmerich classic 2012.
Sure.
And in 2012, the basic premise is, so people who watched it at the time, who were dumb, had small brains, didn't understand it, were like, oh, he thinks there's a Mayan apocalypse, and, he's, like, taking it seriously or whatever. That's why he's releasing a movie the year it's supposed to happen or whatever. Not realizing that Roland Emmerich's all about climate change. The movie's all about climate change. But anyways, so the world's going to end, and the wealthy find out first. And their response is to, one, build bunkers for themselves, which they charge $1 billion a seat in the bunker to ensure that only they can get in, which is going to lead, of course, to a hilarious incident the first time a toilet breaks. But the other thing they do is they collect all the art in the world, right? And of course, not like real art. They're like just going and like, what are the things I saw in a textbook one time? So just getting, like the Mona Lisa from the Louvre or whatever, and replace it with fakes. Because instead of filling their bunker with humans who could actually create more art in the future, right? They're just stealing the old dead shit that they think is important because it costs money, right? And filling it up like that, and then all climbing into their tombs, because none of these people will be able to survive on their own for like more than a week,
Right.
These like the dumbest, worst people that humanity's ever created.
Yeah.
And they all climb in this giant tomb with all their fucking old dead art to just fucking be buried at the bottom of the ocean and let all the rest of us die. And I was like, this is the world we live in. This is the most prophetic film of our era. And this is how we're all gonna die.
Damn. I missed that one, but now I will have to check it out.
Yeah, it also looks badass. I mean, Roland Emmerich, nobody kills the planet better than Roland Emmerich. So.
Yeah, that was kind of his jam, huh?
Yeah, that was his deal. That's what he did.
John Cusack is in that, right? I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
it's,
he's a
John
dad,
Cusack. Well,
divorced
he's
dad,
the
right?
everyman. Yeah, he's the everyman audience surrogate, which means that
Uh-huh.
he's a deadbeat dad.
Yeah, there we go.
Roland Emmerich's like, also in the future, all dads are deadbeat dads. So yeah, Oliver Platt is in it as the like sort of snaky. I think he's supposed to be like the department head, a State Department head or something like that. But anyways, the fucking snaky sort of White House official. Oliver Platt is villains. He's amazing.
Yeah, just that whole plot sounds pretty incredible and prophetic, like you're saying, because we know that people like Peter Thiel have bug out locations. They're doomsday preppers. I mean,
good thing you're related so you can get in one.
Yeah, well,
yeah, no shit. Like, if people listening, if you've not seen 2012, like, watch it and put your, like, you're gonna have to get past the fact that they talk about Mayans and shit. Put on your They Live glasses and see what the film's actually about. And I think you're gonna agree with me. It was the best film of the last 10 years, and it's actually not even debatable.
Damn. Well, I will definitely have to check that out because it sounds cool as hell. Unlike this fucking garbage editorial. So again, go fuck yourself, freaks. That was terrible.
Yeah, honestly, next time you're hanging out, ISIS, don't blow up a statue, blow up the Seattle Times. We'd hate it. It'd be awful. That would demoralize us as a people.
Well, think of all the David Horsey cartoons we would lose.
We would lose. Oh, no. That would be, if they were building the bunker in Seattle, they would be like taking their framed David Horsey cartoons in the bunker, taking up space.
Oh, incredible. Well, on that amazingly uplifting note, we have another super uplifting note, which is a very special edition of the Platty Wagon, which we haven't done in a while.
Should we pretend should we do the thing too of like, oh, what's that noise? Do you hear that, Colin?
Sure.
Oh, there's something approaching.
What? Oh, that sounds really familiar. Is that the Platty Wagon?
I think it is.
Wow, we haven't had a visit from the Platty Wagon in some time.
Yeah. Well, we have weirdly been covering a lot of election stuff and things like that. And we've forgotten that our boys at Seattle PD have also been hard at work. So
they really have, though. I feel like there's been so much stuff that we haven't even talked about.
Oh, God. I know. Like, one, they just killed a guy over here at Lake City. They shot somebody to death just recently, too, I think, over in Wallingford. But yeah, they've been at it. I mean, they're on a tear this year.
The reformed Seattle.
Yeah, exactly. Literally a month after the Seattle City Council, in a completely cowardly fashion, signed that awful fucking contract, they kicked the year off by murdering somebody shortly after midnight on New Year's Eve.
Oh, God damn.
So, we began the year, couldn't make it one day. I think we got like 2 hours in 2019 before they murdered somebody.
Oh, brutal.
So, and the terrors continued into 2020. This is, of course, a story from a year ago that's just, sort of come to its conclusion here. The events happened a year ago. You always get to hear about these things after the fact.
Right.
But a Seattle police officer and his partner, who were asked by other officers, there had been a car wreck, right? A hit and run. That was just a minor fender bender.
Yeah.
And I think they had the license plate of the car that had taken off. So the police officers actually doing the investigation had asked somebody else, hey, can you go to this house that the license plate's, marked to, registered at, and see if you can, find this person, right? And get their contact info and all that stuff so we can find them. So this cop shows up and he tells his partner ahead of time, hey, man, I know this is a lie, but it's going to be fun. He goes to the door. The gentleman who was involved in the hit and run is not there. So he talks to a woman there who knows him. And he decides that even though this was a fender bender where absolutely nobody got hurt in any way, he goes ahead and tells the woman, oh, yeah, the person he hits in critical condition and is probably going to die.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a normal thing that normal people do,
that
right?
sounds like fun.
As that officer later explained in his OPA investigation, he was just engaged in a ruse. A fun ruse.
Some hilarious hijinks.
So in the course of course, the woman, apparently, according to the officer's partner and according to their video camera, the woman who they were telling this to at the house, who, by the way, wasn't the person involved in this hit and run, became immediately extremely upset.
Oh, that's really odd. That's an odd reaction to have when you find out that,
Yeah, remember how we talked about how it. Yeah, remember how we talked about when you have no humanity, you really don't understand what it is for other people to have it, right? Like, and what it might mean.
Yeah.
I think this is another key sort of thing or example here. But yeah, so she, of course, gets a hold of the person who was involved in the hit and run and tells that person that, yes, apparently it was worse than you thought it was. There's a person in critical condition and they're probably going to die. And this is all true because I was told it by the police.
Right. And doesn't she tell him to find a lawyer or something too?
Yeah, that he should go find a lawyer and get, obviously be prepared for, a criminal proceeding, right? Yeah. This person had some legal problems in the past, was obviously not in like a great state or anything like that.
Yeah.
They apparently, of course, everybody in their social circle seems to have heard about this. One of their friends said that they had, after hearing this, had read them the riot act about, look, you hit somebody, you ran away and you killed them, and apparently had like really gone into it on them. And the, again, hit and run driver had burst into tears and seemed like inconsolable. Eventually leaving them, they had left them a pile of their personal belongings with a note saying, if I don't come back, you can have these, right? A good sign,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Right.
So by all accounts, this person was completely distraught about the events and, of course, committed suicide. So, which we were driving towards, obviously.
Yeah.
So what we have here is a Seattle PD officer who was bored and wanted to have a bit of fun, play a good joke. Like, he was probably like, he likes Jackass, and he likes Tom Green, right? Tom Green show fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, like just play a fun-loving prank, just a little prank the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the irony is, it's actually, I don't know if you remember, like, Chappelle's show. He had the joke, like, show that he was going to have, where his, like, joke prank show. And one of the comic bits in it, because it was so insane that it'd only be, like, a comedy bit, is he went to people's houses pretending to be a police officer and told them, like, oh, your loved one has gotten in Iraq and they didn't make it, right? And then people would be like completely distraught, right? And he'd just be like, you got zapped, right? And the joke being, of course, the root of comedy, the situation is so extreme and insane, right? So outside our world that, we can find humor in it. So the police officer decided to do just that. He's like, hey, I'm going to make Zapped real. As he told his partner, this is going to be fun. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
And killed somebody, right? Engaged in actions that, according to the OPA, they claim shocked the conscience, right? Which I think is true.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally directly led to this person's death. The officer themselves, here I'll kick the last paragraph here and we'll talk a little about what happened. But the officer themselves told the OPA, while it was regrettable that the man took his own life, he insisted he wasn't responsible and said he hadn't abused his discretion or acted unprofessionally.
Excuse me?
Yeah. And I thought too, it presented an interesting dichotomy between the police officer, right? The fun or lovable prankster, and the hit and run driver, where, as maybe some people listening are going, but he's a hit and run driver and that's awful, or blah, blah, blah. The hit and run driver felt bad about what he did. Like he felt moral responsibility for this fictional person that he might have killed, right?
Right.
The police officer feels not bad at all, right? Just not 1 ounce of, sorrow, not 1 ounce of feeling even remotely responsible. The behavior you might imagine a fucking sociopath might have, just doesn't feel it at all. Just like, oh, hey, shit happens, right? When you got a prank show, eggs get broken, I guess.
Yeah.
So I know, Colin, what you're thinking. What kind of criminal charges have we brought against this man?
Yes, you're right. That's exactly.
Will it be the chair? Will it be the gas chamber?
The guillotine? The noose?
Some people say life in prison is worse, actually. So
true. Yeah.
Yeah. What are we going with? Well, the Seattle Police Department, that at one point during their supposed reform process had actually agreed to provisions saying that officers actually uniquely in American police departments weren't allowed to lie to people in interrogations. I guess we've forgotten about that. We just thrown that right out the window. But anyways, the Seattle Police Department decided to really throw the book at him. So he's going to get a 6-day suspension, which will certainly be overturned at some point with back pay in the next 6 months. I mean, that is the history, right? So I mean, I can't imagine it's gonna be any different in this case. But yeah, you got a 6-day suspension, so I'm sure he'll really think about it.
And that will show him.
Yeah, well, look, sometimes if you kill somebody, you got to take a time out. You
got to sit in the corner and think about what you did.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to go home, get on Fortnite for 7 straight days or 6 straight days, really upgrade your characters, get some new body armor and stuff for them, get some cool guns, really take your medicine,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that will give that officer pause, and he'll come back better for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that what's actually going to happen is he's just going to be planning even more elaborate pranks.
Yeah, right.
Because, I mean, this one, was a banger, so he's going to have some more for the future.
Yeah, right, because he literally killed.
Yeah. Well, and, our beloved patrons might recall at our episode last week, I believe it was, that we talked about having watched an officer's funeral.
Yeah.
And then we had some fun with it, and we laughed, and we said it was funny. And I just want to reiterate, it is funny. And this is why.
Yeah, because
that is our official position. It is funny when police officers die, and this is why.
Well, I can't imagine any healthy, normal person playing any kind of joke or prank on somebody like this.
Could you imagine? I mean, as an adult, right? I guess if it was somebody who was 10, you would be like, okay, I mean, maybe we should keep an eye on that kid a little bit. But all right, they have poor judgment, and nobody believes them anyways because they're 10.
Right.
But as an adult, somebody in a position where that the person's going to believe you, right? Because of the position you hold in society, doing this, right? You have to have, like I said, there are some people who have humanity in this world and some who don't, and fucking that's one of them right there. So just, fucking unbelievable.
Well,
truly unbelievable.
We are the sheep, right? We need a shepherd. We need a strong hand.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, Seattle PD has done worse things. We got, Seattle police officers who get people down on their knees and then just shoot them in the back of the head and things like that. A real thing that happened in early January of 2019.
Cool.
Also without any sort of punishment. We have police officers who do that. Who've engaged in very direct, deliberate, violent behavior. But there's just something about the just cruel sort of callousness of this and the idea that you're just having a fun laugh at somebody's expense that, somehow cuts through even that noise of just being especially fucking disgusting.
It's really, truly reprehensible. It's
cool.
gross. And I am glad though that they're reformed. That this
Yeah,
stuff doesn't
yeah.
happen anymore.
Yeah, and and I will say the Seattle Times article is full of all the same language that we've had in our paper for 10 years about how just people quoting city council members and stuff, like people from the OPA and stuff being like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it just shows that we got to keep going with the reform process, which apparently, we have 10 years of atrocities that show we have to keep going with the reform process. And as far as I can tell, the only reform process we have is saying in articles after police kill somebody, we have to keep going with the reform process. Seems to be the only process that actually exists. And it's a much smaller deal, but it mirrors in a lot of ways these imperial disasters in the Middle East and Central Asia and Africa and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
where nobody can tell you why it keeps happening. We all see that it's awful, and apparently we just are completely helpless to do anything about it. Like, we're just in this complete impasse where it's like, we all see it, we know it's a fucking mess, but what can you do, right?
Yeah. We're right. We
police
all,
are gonna police. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, we all feel powerless to stop everything. Yeah. Well, yeah, once again, you've managed to make me feel real good about being alive, and especially
another uplifting episode.
Get 2020 started off right. So
yeah, exactly. Get 2020 started off right by watching 2012, guys.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, we don't have any new patrons to thank, unfortunately, but
do better, guys. Do better.
I'm sure that will change once people hear that we really hate cops.
I'm sure my comment about how When Police Die It's actually funny is gonna really build support for the show.
That's gonna resonate. That's the kind of stuff that you just build brands and marketing on, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I think that was it for us. Please, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, go check us out on Patreon. We have many, many episodes, lots of cool stuff. Some episodes where we say it's cool when cops die, most where we don't. Where it's just subtext.
Only one episode is mostly about cats too, so there's true. Even some non-cats material in there for you weirdos out there.
And we are working on fixing that ratio per usual. So go check that out, and thanks for listening.
Bye.